Hello, Year 3. This is lesson number 24. Now, lesson 24, you will have a word problem that I've already started to help you find the answer. Now, here I have a similar word problem, but I've just changed the numbers. So, let's have a look. Andy had a big bag of marbles. Unfortunately, the bottom of the bag split and all the marbles fell out. Poor Andy. Luckily, Andy's friend Sam found a third of the marbles. Andy was so happy, so he gave Sam 1/4 of them to say thanks. Andy put the rest in his pocket. Now he only has 9 marbles left. Now today we're going to find out 3 different things. One thing that we need to find out is how many marbles were there to start. How many did he have in his bag before it broke? Second thing is how many marbles did he give to Sam? So Sam found some, he gave him a certain amount, so we need to find out how many that was. And last, how many did Sam find? Now, even though these are ordered like this, we might need to find one answer of this first before we can find that. So let's have a go at this. Now, a really good strategy to do when we're first looking at word problems is to blank out the actual numbers and just think about what is the question asking us? What do we need to find out? So let's read it again. This time I've put Post-its over my numbers so we can think about this a bit more. Andy had a big bag of marbles. Unfortunately, the bottom of the bag split. And all the marbles fell out. Poor Andy. Luckily, Andy's friend Sam found of the marbles. So Andy had some, they split. There was a certain amount that went here and Sam found those. Andy was so happy. So he gave Sam, from this pile, he gave him a little bit more of that. Andy put the rest in his pocket. And now he only has left. So if we pretended these are my marbles, they spilled. And then let's say Sam picks up this many. Already we know that that's not how many there were originally. And then Andy decides, oh, I'm so happy here, you can have this much. So he puts this much in his pocket and Sam walks away with this much. So what do we know? We know that there's going to be a less, that Andy started with a lot more, Sam started with none, and that it got into smaller portions that kept on being divided. So let's have a look at this now with our numbers. So Andy's friend found a third. So we're going to pretend that this was a third of our whole. Andy was so happy. From that third, he gave Sam 1/4 of them. And then that way he had this much left. So if he gave Sam 1/4, how many would he have left? We're going to have to find that out. And now he has 9 left. Now, let's take a look at this using equations. Now, I've drawn a little picture to look at this. The first thing we need to do is start with what we know. So we actually need to work backwards in this case. So we know that Andy has 9, and that 9 is part of what he has left over. Now, Sam was given 1/4. So if Sam was given 1/4, how much does Andy have? Well, we know that all together, this whole thing would be 4/4. So 4/4, that would be our 1/2. So we need to go 4/4, 4/4, take away 1/4, because that would be Sam, to find out how much Andy has. Now, hopefully you remember, our denominators are the same, so they stay the same. 4 take away 1, so our numerator is going to be 3. So now we know that 3/4 is what Andy has. So 3/4 of that is equal to 9. Well, we're going to need to work backwards to figure out how much the whole was. Now, normally, of course, we would have WDD and MN. What do you think we're going to have to do in this case? We're going to have to use our inverse. So we know that, let's work backwards. Our last step would be multiply by numerator. Well, in this case, we're going to start with 9. And we're going to divide by the numerator. So instead of multiplying it, we're going to divide. So our numerator is 3. So 9 divided by 3, well, you can use our inverse here. 3 times 3 is 9, so that is equal to 3. So let's check. We would know multiply by the numerator, so this must be 3 times 3 is our numerator equals 9. Perfect. Now we need to figure out this step. So we found out that this answer is equal to 3. Whole divided by denominator equals 3. Well, again, we're going to have to use our inverse. So instead of whole divided by the denominator, let's see. So we're going to do 3 instead of divide times, and what's our denominator? 4. 3 times 4 is equal to 12. So let's check that. If we're saying our whole is 12, divided by our denominator, 4, is 12 divided by 4 equal to 3? It is. Perfect. So now we already know 2 things. We know that 12 is how much that Sam found. He found 12 of the marbles. And we know that he gave 3 to Sam, because 3 is 1/4 of 12. We found that here. So we know that he gave Sam 3, and we know that he kept 9. We can double check that as well. Is that equal to 12? Perfect. It equals to 12. Now you see how we worked backwards to already find 2 of our pots. Now let's look at the next pot. So in our problem, the first thing that we found out, so Andy had his bag of marbles, they broke, but luckily Sam found 1/3 of the marbles. Now our step before, we found out that Sam, that third was actually equal to 12. So we know that 1/3 of the marbles, I'll just do this, is equal to 12. Now we're going to have to do the same thing again and do that WDD M&N backwards. So WDD M&N. Now, same thing, we have 12. So we're going to say, instead of multiplying, we're going to have to use our inverse, and we're going to divide. So 12 divide, still our numerator. Which number is our numerator? Lovely, 1. 12 divided by 1 is equal to 12. Super. Now we're going to have to figure out that whole divided by the denominator. So in this case, we still have 12, but instead of dividing, we're going to times by our denominator. So 12 times 3. Hopefully you have some strategies to help you with this. Remember, we looked at first timesing the ones. So 3 times 2 is equal to 6. So I put 6 in my ones. And then 3 times 1 10. 3 tens, that would be 30. So 3 in my tens place. So we found out that 12 times 3 is equal to 36. Now we can double check this with our M&N, WDD M&N. So let's see, whole 36 divided by denominator 3. 36 divided by 3, well, same thing. I can start with my 1, 6 divided by 3. I know that that's going to put a 2 in the ones. 3 tens divided by 3. Oh, that's going to be 1 10. 30 divided by 3 is equal to 10. So I know that that's 12. Not finished. Multiply this by my numerator. Numerator is 1, and that gives me 12. Perfect. Now, let's have a look at this in our word problem again and put the numbers in. Okay, let's check. Andy had a big bag of marbles. Unfortunately, the bottom of the bag split and all the marbles fell out. And we found out that Andy had 36 marbles in his bag. Poor Andy. Luckily, Andy's friend Sam found a third of the marbles. Do you remember what a third was of 36? 12. Excellent. Andy was so happy, so he gave Sam 1/4 of that 12. So what's 1/4 of 12? 12 divided by 4. Perfect. Times 1. 3. So Andy gave Sam 3 marbles to say thank you. Andy put the rest in his pocket, and now he has 9 left. And we can double check that. 9 plus 3 is equal to 12. We know that that's our 12. And then the third, 12 times 3, 36. Thank you. Super. Now, I know that it's a lot of steps, and hopefully on the worksheet you can see how I've helped you out a lot there. I think the trickiest thing here is because obviously the problem doesn't say that Andy has in mind, Andy has 3/4, but that makes sense because Sam has 1/4 of it, so Andy must have the 3/4 left. So think about yours. If one person has a third, how much would that other person have? Remember, they need to put it together to make that whole. Again, try your best on this. It really is just using the inverse. So using your WDD, M&N, but the inverse way. But it should be fine. Again, try your best with it. And see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.